So if you have noticed, circulating through the community lately has been the whole McGregor and Ronaldo thing. Conor McGregor was obviously sat with Ronaldo and his son during the Day of Reckoning on the 23rd of December. Can I just say, folks, as well, Merry Christmas, hope you had a good New Year. I vlogged my Christmas Eve on the vlog channel, and it's quite lonely being out here in Thailand, but we've got a mission, we've got a solo mission, and I'm sure I'll be there for Christmas next year back home. So as I want to quickly start with saying, I hope you had a great Christmas, guys. It is Boxing Day today, so it's only right that we talk a bit about the Day of Reckoning, but most importantly, McGregor's career. And I've got a few things to say about this because I'm kind of getting a bit fed up of him not fighting. He was sat with Ronaldo. There was all those memes that came out, okay, of like Ronaldo just being like, oh, McGregor doing his thing, seeming a bit on something, rambling on. He's such a big personality, but I was looking at him and I was thinking, like, if you take it back to January of what, 2020, 2021, one of the two, I believe it was 2021, the way he was shaving and looked yes, it was fight week of the Poirier 2 fight, to now, like the difference in his head shape and the difference in how he looks and how he talks, his accent, how he talks, how he conducts himself. He used to be a really, really well-spoken individual, but now he's kind of this big personality, but he's like just rambling, a big rambling mess, can't really understand what he's saying. It's almost obvious that he was on something steroids wise, you know, like he even admitted, you know, he was gaining all this big muscle while healing the foot at the same time, you know, just fully developing himself, and human growth hormone was most likely what he was on. His head shape changed, his back changed, and in the past 2-3 months we've really seen a decline in that big muscle gain, and you know, he looks a bit slimmer around his neck, his shoulders, and his chest, and obviously his hair as well is growing longer again, but he just looked like a mess. He looks just old, and he looks a mess. And I know he's training, I know he's probably in good quality shape, definitely not fight shape, and I know he's probably walking around 178, 180, I'd say. I'd say he's probably around 180 right now, walking around. He's not a big guy, he's 5'8.5", I'd say. He's not quite, like, look, he's a personality larger than life, and he is frustrated. He was saying in interviews, just get me a fight, get me a fight. He's getting fed up of not fighting. He was talking about boxing Manny Pacquiao, trying to get Pacquiao to come up a few weight classes just because he wants a fight. He's talking about doing charity events with Nate Diaz the same night as UFC 300 because he wanted to fight on 300, but now they're saying May, June, July. They've done this to him before. Because McGregor is such a big star and such a big money draw for the UFC, there's been a few people saying that potentially the UFC lose money on Conor McGregor fights because they pay him out so much money that they're actually kind of at a bit of a disadvantage. It would make sense because, do you remember when he fought Cowboy, how bad the card was underneath that? Because they knew they were going to sell 1.2 million pay-per-views regardless, you know? And having him on UFC 300, I think, is a great idea, just in terms of the storyline and everything, okay? The comeback, biggest comeback in sports history, UFC 300. But if UFC 300 does well, it'll most likely sell around 800,000 pay-per-views, okay? That's my prediction. And then you can have the McGregor card, the card after, and sell 1.3 million. You know what I mean? So that's two massive cards instead of having one card sell 1.4 million pay-per-views. Do you know what I mean? So there's that business aspect of it as well. But the UFC have done it to Conor before when he's been begging for a fight. He'd been dying for a fight, and they've said, oh, like back in the day when it was 2019, before he fought Khabib, he was like, he wanted to fight Frankie Edgar, and he wanted to fight him 8 weeks after demanding that fight, and they said, no, for like cards like yours, we have to structure them correctly so they don't pay out too many people with pay-per-view points, and Frankie Edgar and you takes more than 8 weeks to promote and all this, so he's not getting treated like a regular fighter who gets to fight 3 times a year. It has to be perfect and circumstantial and this and that, and it's not like Conor McGregor, because he's such a big star, can just say, I want to fight in 4 weeks time, I'll fight on this card, get me back in there. The UFC don't allow that of him because he's a larger than life star, and they need all these dots to connect, which obviously it's terrible for Conor McGregor's career, because it's like, if he's saying, okay, I'm back, I'm 35 years old, I need to be active and have my season, and they aren't allowing that to start. And think about it, guys, January is in 4-5 days time. If they don't let him fight until after April, and he squeezes one more in, maybe December, you know, by December next year he's 36, and you've missed out on a McGregor fight like towards the start of the year. I think April's the perfect time for him to come back. 300, McGregor versus Gaethje, McGregor versus Chandler. I don't care who the opponent is. It could be McGregor versus Paddy Pimblett for all I care. I do not care. We need him back in the cage just as fans and just for the sport in general to bring eyeballs back to him, because I feel terrible for him in a sense, not even just in a sense of like I feel bad he's not getting a fight. I just feel bad people are just seeing him as this rambly bambly drunk mess, which is what he's coming across as. It's like, oh my word, mate, please get in camp. But I just think if you've got 600 million in your bank account and you've got a table full of food in front of you every evening, you can eat the best quality food, hire chefs to live with you, you've got your kids, your wife, you can do whatever you want, go wherever you want, you don't have to work a day in your life. Getting up, training 2.5 hours in the morning, recovering, not going and doing stuff, recovering, then training 2.5 hours in the afternoon again for 12 weeks, 6 days in the week. That doesn't sound appealing if you've got 600 million in your bank account. For example, Sean O'Malley said this in a podcast a few weeks ago. He said, if I had Conor money, you'd really have to look yourself in the mirror and be like, do I even bother fighting again? Because you're so famous just off the name and by being that status of man, you're so famous, but it really, really just depends on how badly do you want to fight. Like, yes, McGregor wants to compete. This is the thing. He doesn't give a fuck who against. He just wants to get in there and compete. He's a competitor by nature. He wants to compete and do his thing because he loves to do it. But the UFC are seeing it more as a thing of, okay, he wants to compete, but we're a business at the end of the day, and he's this character. The dots need to align. The right people need to be below him on the card. It needs to be the right date where, for example, the UFC have talked before about January being like a slower part of the year, but the past few years it's been a bigger part of the year because they get the year off with the bang and get fans excited to pay a year subscription. So they had McGregor, Cowboy in January, they had McGregor, Poirier a year later, January, so it's just like, it was like, what, January 18th, January 23rd, both years in a row. That's a year apart fights for McGregor, and yes, COVID came into it, but he had to beg to fight in Fight Island, you know what I mean? They would not let him fight until they could have part of a stadium filled out, do you know what I mean? Because they just know how much money they can get out of him. I do get it though, because this could be potentially his last fight. You want it to be perfect, and the UFC are smart, they know that. But if a man's saying he's ready and he's wanting to fight, and he's contracted to you, they can hold him hostage and say, no, we're going to have you fight in June or July. He's going to be 36 in July. Like, he's almost 10 years ago he won the belt. Do you know what I mean? The second belt. That's 7 years ago now. You know what I mean? I was fucking like 12 or 13. I'm now almost 20. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's just, they're holding him hostage, and I feel bad for him. And he wants to compete, but everything has to align for him to compete. And I don't know what mental state he's in, and I do not even know how I feel if I had 800 million in the bank. Could do whatever I want. You could retire there and then, and I think fighting is something that he can do, because imagine what would you do if you had 600 million, you know what I mean?